Hi, welcome to Hanging with Heid. I'm Heidi Jo Lopez. For those of you who already follow me, you're probably wondering what happened. I have been off the air for at least a month and a half. Um, at first, the first part that I was off, I know I should have announced it. I didn't, forgive me for that. But I was in quite a drive to work and get my books that most of them have been previously published and released some time ago. And I have worked to get them back onto my website, at least for purchase as ebooks at this time. So I was working very feverishly. I felt driven by the Lord to do so. I also, just the very last book that I released and is now available on my website, HeidiJoLopez.com, is my brand new book, The Streets of Dubai, that has never been published before. And so I'm very excited about that. So for those first few weeks, I was working very feverishly to get that all done. Again, forgive me for not coming on and letting you all know that I was going to take a short sabbatical. It was kind of, the Lord put it on my heart and I needed to get it done. Also in this amount of time, my mom took a turn for the worse. And so there was a lot of time that I needed to spend with her, which I'm so grateful that I had it and was able to do so. In that same amount of time, I had the privilege to begin to go out and begin to share what God has done in a miraculous way and healing my body and testifying and getting the opportunity to pray over people and see God move in their lives. And so I had the privilege of going to Pastor Tanya Hull's church, City Gate, and speaking with her people and praying with them, and that was fantastic. And in the same day, that evening, I went to Pastor Isaac and Christina Hernandez's church, Chosen Church, and both of these are in one is in Hillsborough, the other is in Gresham. And I had the privilege of speaking to their congregation and praying with them. And it was a mighty powerful time. And God moved amazingly. And he didn't just stretch them, he really stretched me. I stepped out in ways that I have only done a few times before, and prayed prophetically and watched God do great things. And hopefully I will get to share some of the testimonies that have come from that time down there. Now, having shared that, which it was amazing, and God gets all the glory, and he showed up in such a powerful way and strengthened our faith and grew our faith and touched lives. And I'm so thankful for that. Upon returning home that Monday, Tuesday, then the following day, my mom had another fall, and which proceeded to the end of her life. My sister and I, Sherry, my oldest sister, we were able to be with her the entire time through that Tuesday night. We had to pray through a time of great pain for her. And then there came a time in the middle of that night when I knew in my spirit, and I was asking the Lord for great direction, because my sister and I have been battling in prayer for her healing for a handful of years. And I'm going to explain that because it's powerful, and it teaches us how we have to listen closely to what God says and not add our own thoughts to it, our own supposition. We literally see in part and prophesy in part. So as we have been battling for her these last couple of years, after the Lord gave me a word for her and how to pray, it was a very hard decision to release her to go to heaven. And so in that moment, when mom was in quite a bit of pain, and we had been working with hospice to regulate it and so that she wouldn't be in any pain, I knew finally, after beseeching the Lord quite some time while praying with mom and my sister, that I needed to release her to go to heaven. I will not share that. It was a very private moment. But as I released her, and my sister was in agreement, and we released her to go to heaven. She took a deep breath and she looked to the left, and the Lord had opened her eyes, and we know she saw a beautiful angel, and she lifted up her hands and she looked to her left and she said, oh, the most beautiful man. And it was either Jesus or an angel. And in that moment, she became quieter and she found rest. And only one other time that day did she experience pain. We were able to regulate that. My best friend, Tanya, was able to come up. Many family were able to come up. And a group of us were with Mom when she passed the next evening, September 28, 2022, at 10:15. And I know that she is in a far better place than I can even imagine, even though I have a really good imagination. And I'm so grateful for that. But for those of you who follow me and care for us, I would ask that you pray, because when such a powerful, amazing person of God leaves, it leaves a big hole to those who knew them and loved them. And so we greatly appreciate your prayers in this time. So let me go back to my mom's victory. And obviously, you know, I'm going to cry. Anybody that knows me enough knows I'm a crier. So excuse me. So in the spring of 2020, and I may have mentioned it on an episode before. In the spring of 2020, it might have actually been more June. The Lord, I was in prayer, and the Lord spoke to me, and He said, "You need to start praying for your mom's healing. I'm going to give her a Lazarus moment." Now, I say it that way because that's exactly what He said. Start praying for her now, because I'm going to give her a Lazarus moment. Now, I became very excited and sure that God was going to heal her and raise her up in such a powerful way, and great glory was going to go to Him. And she would preach the gospel, and people would get saved and healed because of the amazing healing done in her body. And so I ran ahead of that word and imagined what it was going to be, which I think it's okay that I did. And but I've learned a lot about the Lord and in these last few years, and a lot about when He gives a word, we have to leave it at that word. We have to pray into it and ask for wisdom. But in that time, God grew our faith as we band together, a group of us, and diligently prayed for Mom's full healing. Now, having shared that, in the time that He told me to begin to pray for her, shortly after that, we almost lost our mom. She actually saw heaven open up. I was with my sister Lori. We were there with her, and Mom saw heaven open up, and I could tell she was starting to leave. And Lori looked at me, and she was crying, and she said, "She's dying." And my spirit rose up in me, and I knew it wasn't her time. And I spoke to her firmly, and I said, "Mom, it is not your time. You need to come back." And the Lord told me that I needed to start reminding her of her life here. And so I started telling stories about when we were kids and all the amazing things that she did and taught us. And all of a sudden, she came back to us. In that amount of time, before that, my mom had had a massive stroke April 19th, 2019. And we were going to lose her at that time, but God did another amazing, miraculous thing, and He completely restored her to us. She had already been battling Parkinson's with dementia, and so the fact that she was able to be restored as greatly as she was phenomenal. But since that time, for over a year, she had had a series of mini strokes almost every week, sometimes 3 or 4 times a week, and it was super hard on her. It was hard to watch, and we would pray each time, and God would intervene. And but it was emotional and it was hard and painful for her. And so when I called her back by the grace and the glory of God that day with my sister Lori, God stopped her strokes. And all of a sudden, Mom stopped having the many strokes. And she began to have another burst of energy and got to go out to dinner and lunch and travel, around our community with her caregivers and with us. And it was such a mighty blessing. And over that period of time, we have nearly lost her multiple times. And we would keep standing for her Lazarus moment. And I would think, okay, Lord, any moment now, any moment now. And I learned how to pray over her and decree and declare over her. And I spoke boldly to her and she interceded with me. She would raise her hands. She would speak in tongues. She would come into agreement with the prayer. And she lived life so much better in that period of time. She lived life with hope. She lived life with victory. She continued to love on the women that surrounded her, to care for her. And she impacted each of their lives amazingly, impacted them. And so what Satan definitely planned for evil, God turned to mighty great good, because although she was mostly housebound in that time, people would come to her and she was speaking life into them and wisdom over them and praying for them and loving them, which probably one of my mom's greatest gifts was her incredible capacity to love unconditionally and to give of herself. She was incredibly generous and kind, and an incredible legacy she has laid for us to walk on and carry out the destinies that God has placed in us. So in the middle of all of that, you would think, wow, she had a Lazarus moment. But I really believe that her Lazarus moment was at the very end of her life. The week before, actually days before, Sam and I left to go down to the Portland area to minister down there and share of the testimony that God had done in my life and pray for the people. My mom had 3 amazing days, 3. And I saw it, but I was unable to fully wrap my brain around it. More clarity came after. The Lord, when I came back with Tanya and Sam and I had gone to a Reawaken event. And if you don't know what that is, you can look it up with Clay Clark on Thrive Time podcast. Anyway, we went to a Reawaken event in Idaho. And while we were away, the Lord spoke to me very clearly about Mom's Lazarus moment and how Mary and Martha had prayed. And even though when they doubted, God still brought the amazing Lazarus. He brought Lazarus forth. And I knew we were not supposed to give up praying for my mom. And I called my sister Sherry and I told her, and she said, okay. When I got home, that night I went to sleep. I woke up. The Lord had given me incredible things to pray and declare over my mom. And I went over the next day and I prayed over her and I declared over her and I spoke life over her. And I knew that God was doing something. And that was the evening. She was sleeping. The very next day, Mom's caregiver, Sarah, contacted me and said, your mom has woken up. She's as clear as I've seen her in a really long time. She's full of life, full of joy, full of happiness. And to be honest with you, I wasn't shocked because I knew that God had told me to speak those things over her. In that amount of time, several of her grandchildren were able to spend time with her and love on her. My friend Tanya was able to have an incredible time of talking and love and an incredible long hug, which my mom is the greatest hugger of all time. And so that was incredibly special for her. It was special for my sisters and myself. Just an incredible time. Our sister Lori got to have a whole day with her, which I'm sure she will be unpacking for some time to see all that God gave her the opportunity to have with Mom. And I know it will bless her and has blessed her. And on the third day, we all had a lunch at mom's house. Several of the grandkids, my friend Tanya, my sisters and I, and Sarah, her caregiver, who's another sister. She came as a caregiver and has become family. And so in that time we had with mom, I was talking with her and she said to me, she goes, I didn't think I was going to come back. And I knew in my spirit that she meant come back to reality. She was in a place where she knew she was seconds from heaven, and she didn't think she was going to be able to come back and see us clearly without dementia clouding her, without the lies of the enemy clouding her, and that she would be able to see us clearly. And then after she said, I didn't think I was going to be able to come back, she said, why is it so hard? Why are goodbyes so hard? And I knew she meant forever goodbyes. And I didn't ever like to put words in her mouth. So I sat down with her and I said, what do you mean by that, Mom? And she looked at me very clearly and she said, goodbyes are so hard. And as each one of us left that day, when my sister-in-law began to leave, my mom grabbed her and spoke very clearly to her, wanting her to know clearly how she felt, that she wanted us girls to stay so knit together and to not allow the enemy to divide us. And I felt in my spirit that that goodbye was a goodbye. So when I hugged my mom that day, and she held my face and she told me how much she loved me, I'm thankful for her incredible Lazarus moment that we all got to enjoy. That's God's grace. And so it was worth the years of praying and decreeing over her and fighting for her to have that incredible last time. And when God took her home, it was a mighty crescendo because Pastor Ken Hool, Tanya's dad, who is very much my dad, and I'm thankful for him and for Marianne for being my parents. Uh, what a blessing to have them in my life. He shared with us that if you don't know who Brother Seymour is, he was the catalyst, the one that God used to usher in the Great Awakening that occurred in the late 1800s, early 1900s, Azusa Street revival time. And he was a mighty, mighty powerful man of God. Look him up if you don't know who he is. And right before he passed, he prophesied that in 100 years after he passed, that God would usher in the final Great Awakening. Brother Seymour passed September 28th, 1922, and my mama passed September 28th, 2022, 100 years after Brother Seymour. And I knew that was a hug from God. Another hug from God. It's like the crescendo, the huge exclamation point on my mama's life. And I'm so thankful to God for that. And that was a huge hug to us to say, oh no, she is a mighty woman of God. And upon her seed going into the soil, I will birth forth something mighty and something great. So I encourage you, excuse me, I encourage you to look for it, get excited for it, be re-encouraged. If you have let hope deferred come in, do not allow hope deferred to come in. Kick it down and stomp on its head and stand firm in Christ, because God is initiating the final Great Awakening, and it will be far greater than we ever imagined. And let me once again encourage you to read Habakkuk 1:5. Read the whole thing. It is spectacular. But at the end part of it is, I am going to do something in your day that even if it were told to you, you would not believe it. This is the time we are in. Look for it. Open your eyes. Do not harden your heart. Be ready, even if you have suffered great loss. Because this year, I have almost lost my husband at the beginning. I lost my uncle. our dog of 16 years, which seems little compared to my uncle and nearly losing my husband. And I lost my mama. But in this year, I have grown and known that God's great awakening is here and it is birthing and it is about to explode on this earth. So do not miss your opportunity. Get in, grab a hold of it, and whatever He tells you to do, you do. Be blessed, be encouraged, and I'll see you another time. Bye.